Hello everyone, I'm Lanka, Assistant Professor of English in St. Joseph's College of Arts and Science, Cuddalore. In this video, we are going to discuss the essay Tension in Poetry written by Allen Tate. Before we go into the essay, we shall first discuss the author. His given name was John Orley Allen Tate, more commonly known to us as Allen Tate. He was born in the USA in 1899 and died at the age of 79 in 1979. He was a poet, novelist, essayist, and social commentator. He was poet laureate from 1943 to 1944. He is more famous for his poetry and literary criticism. He coined the term tension to describe what he called the common quality of good poetry. He gave more importance to the formal qualities of a work of art. He was one of the youngest new critics and the leading exponent of new criticism. What is new criticism? New criticism was a formalist movement that dominated the American literary criticism in the middle decades of the 20th century. It emphasized close reading of the text, especially of poetry, and not to be distracted by the author or his background. New criticism was a term coined by John Crowe Ransom. So, having looked into the author's background as well as what is new criticism, let us now see what Tate has to say about tension in poetry. This essay has been taken from Allen Tate's The Man of Letters in the Modern World Selected Essays. In this essay, he speaks about tension as the life of a poem. This essay is divided into three parts. Part 1 deals with fallacy of communication. In Part 2, he defines tension and explains its importance. And in Part 3, he writes about the significance of tension. In the beginning of the essay, Tate mentions two kinds of language found in most poems. One is denotative and the other connotative. Denotative refers to superficial meaning, whereas connotative refers to implied meaning. We move on to the first part of the essay, which is on fallacy of communication. Fallacy means deceptive or false appearance, or something that misleads the eye or the mind. Justice Denied in Massachusetts. It was a famous poem published in 1927 and written by Miss Millay. It speaks about the rotting of the crops in Massachusetts. This poem was mainly based on two Italian immigrants who had been executed based on the judgment passed at that time. But the poet and many of her contemporaries felt that they had been unfairly executed. Now, the readers of later times cannot understand the exact meaning of the poem because they wouldn't know about the two Italian immigrants who had been executed at that time, and they failed to make the connection. Here comes the fallacy of communication. Now in this next slide, Tate gives us another example, which is a poem by James Thomson known as The Vine. If you read the lines that have been quoted here, you will observe that the language appeals to the emotion. The wine of love is music, and the feast of love is song. When love sits down to banquet, love sits long. So, like I told you, the language appeals to the emotion, but it does not have any literal meaning. Therefore, it is obscure. In this slide, we see one more example given by Tate. He has chosen the poem Hymn to Light written by Cowley. And if you read the lines given here, we understand that if the poem The Vine is a failure in denotation, then Hymn to Light is a failure in connotation. There is neither extension or intention in these two poems. Therefore, they both fail in communicating clearly to the readers, hence leading to fallacy of communication. Now, having seen to part 1 of the essay, now we move on to part 2. And this part we see Tate defining tension. He coined the term tension by removing the prefixes from the two terms intention and extension. Extension means logical or denotative meaning in poetry. Intention refers to suggestive or connotative meaning in poetry. Both are required for a poem to be successful. Tate defines tension as life of the poem. Now, a meaning of a poem can always vary depending upon the reader. Take, for example, Andrew Marvell's poem To His Coy Mistress. Some may feel after reading the poem that it recommends immoral behavior to young men. Yes, it is one meaning of the poem on the surface level, but it has an implied meaning too, which is spiritual. So this poem has both intensive and extensive meanings. Moving to the next slide, we see Tate giving a positive example of Donne's poem Valediction Forbidding Mourning, or to be exact, a quatrain from it. In Tate's analysis, the soul of the lovers is a non-spatial entity and is therefore indivisible. The abstract form of the extensive meaning of the quotation or its logic. The non-spatial entity, the soul, is expressed by the image of a spatial material, gold. Since the material is extensible to infinity, the meaning of the metaphor does not cancel its extensive meaning. Gold is spatial and soul is non-spatial. We understand here that the soul is compared with gold to show that the soul is as unique as gold. In this poem, we see both intention and extension and how they enrich each other. Likewise, Tate gives many more examples, even from Shakespeare, to highlight the importance of tension in a poem. So, having seen to the two parts of the essay, now we move on to the final part, in which he gives one more example to make us understand the significance of tension in poetry. Now, this example is from one of my favorite poems of all time, The Divine Comedy by Dante. The three lines or tercet quoted from Inferno in Divine Comedy are about a character called Francesca introducing herself to Dante. Francesca and her illicit lover, Paolo, are in the second circle of hell, which is allotted for the sinners who have committed the sin of lust. Here they are being tossed around by strong winds. But when she speaks to Dante, the wind dies down. The literal meaning is that Francesca is talking about her town by a sea into which River Po and its tributaries flow. But there is a metaphorical meaning as well. River Po is portrayed as being chased by its tributaries. Similarly, Francesca is pursued by lovers and lust. Secondly, tributaries become one with Po as they all flow into the sea. Likewise, Francesca becomes one with her lover and lust and thus becomes the sin. The winds of lust and River Po are both auditory and visual images. They can be heard as well as seen. Francesca becomes her sin. Her sin too is both seen and heard. Thus, in this poem, extension and intention become one. Tate quotes these lines, claiming them as a supreme example of tension and to show the significant role it plays in a poem. Thank you for watching this video and hope you found it beneficial and easier to understand the essay. Look forward to more. Once again, thank you and bye.